Good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council meetings can take place in person as long as physical distancing of 2 meters can be maintained between participants. At this time, according to Alberta Health, public attendance at council meetings should be facilitated through virtual means. If you've submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speaks at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the Municipal Government Act, Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. And because we're conducting a hybrid meeting, we will start with a roll call. Division 2, Reeve Link is here. Division 5, Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Here, present.
Councillor Wilson.
Here.
Councillor Bigger.
Here.
Councillor Eichert.
Present.
Councillor Kester.
Here.
Councillor Armstrong.
Not here.
I can see him. Additionally, our voting procedure will be modified for our teleconference meetings. I will call for any councillor who is opposed to a motion to indicate verbally. For any motion with expressed opposition, we will conduct a roll call vote. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
I have one. Under 2.3.3 for capital budget, I'd like to have a discussion about signage.
Which?
Signage.
Signage.
Sorry.
So we'll just include that under 2.33, but I've made a note to make sure that we address it. Any other additions?
Not a if you're gonna just make sure we address that, would you make sure we address the fire?
Yes.
Purchases, please.
You bet.
Good morning, Reeve Link, Brian from administration. I do have some correspondence that I'd like to add. It was correspondence from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Tracy Allard, and it was received on December 11th. I have provided a paper copy to everyone in council this morning, and I'll forward a copy on as soon as I can to Glenn, who's participating virtually.
Thank you. We'll add that under 3. We'll do 3.1. Any other additions?
I'd like to add one in camera, FOIP 21 for WRC. Information, I guess, would be.
We'll add that under 4. Any other additions or changes? A motion to approve the agenda.
So moved as amended.
Councillor Armstrong has moved as amended. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We had the minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting, November 24th. Presented. Any errors or omissions?
If there are none, I'll move the minutes.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Is anybody opposed? Motion is carried. We also had the minutes from the regular council meeting of December 1st. Any errors or omissions?
If there are no errors, I will move to accept.
Councillor Bigger has moved to approve the minutes. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.11, Bylaw 2020-38.
Good morning, Council. Can you hear me?
You bet. Good morning, Megan.
Perfect. Yep, this is Megan, Planner 2 of Wheatland County, here to present first reading of Bylaw 2020-38, found on page 15 of Council's package. The subject parcel is 160 acres in size and is located south of Highway 1 and west of Range Road 233. The location plan is on page 21. The application is to redesignate the whole parcel from agricultural general to the energy district in order to facilitate the development permit application for a 20.1 MWAC commercial solar photovoltaic facility. Staff circulated the application to external agencies and internally. To date, staff has received no explicit concerns from external agencies. And as the developer is using an oil and gas road to access the site, Public Works did indicate the applicant should enter into an access easement with those landowners. The developer has confirmed that they've entered into these agreements. A county road use agreement will also be a condition of the development permit. Staff circulated landowners within 2 miles of the proposed development to notify them of the application. For the public hearing, staff will also be circulating again to notify landowners of the public hearing date and when the due date for comments is. So the developer is proposing to construct a 20.1 MWAC commercial solar photovoltaic facility within the Southwest 92423 west of the Fort. It will provide power to FortisAlberta's electric distribution system by connecting to the AltaLink substation 800 meters east of the proposed facility. The construction period is expected to last 8 months, with 40 personal vehicles and 3 flatbed transport trucks accessing the site daily. The developer is predicting this project will create over 100 jobs during peak construction phase. Once construction is completed, traffic is expected to drop to 1 to 2 personal vehicles a week. Access to the site will be from Range Road 233 through the existing oil and gas road. The haul route map is on page 24 of Council's package. At the decommissioning phase of the development, the developer is required through the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act and the Conservation and Reclamation Directive for Renewable Energy Operations to reclaim the site to a pre-disturbance state. The reclamation obligation can only be discharged after the province has issued a reclamation certificate. The developer has obtained approval through the AUC, which is the Alberta Utility Commission. I lost my spot. For this development under decision number 24266-D01-2020. In order to better understand the county's jurisdiction regarding AUC approved developments, staff did contact the AUC, who provided a legal opinion. Their lawyer explained that Section 619 of the Municipal Government Act explains the relationship between municipalities and AUC decisions. In summary, the AUC decision prevails over our land use bylaw, statutory plans, and development authority. We are to review the land use bylaw and development permit application and ensure it aligns with the AUC's decision. Section 619 also states that matters that were decided by the AUC may not be addressed again during the public hearing process, except as necessary to determine whether an amendment to a statutory plan or land use bylaw is required. At the public hearing, staff will outline the matters raised during the AUC hearing and the AUC's decision on said matters. The preliminary review determined the proposed facility would not meet the 300-meter setback as per the Energy District. The AUC did grant a variance to this setback. When the developer submits their development permit application, they will still need to request this variance from the county. As well, staff and the Development Authority must ensure their requested setback aligns with the AUC decision. The proposed facility appears to fall outside of the least conflict lands map. However, the Mistakis Institute provided comment that the parcel should have been categorized as least conflict lands for wind and solar development, and explained it was only, and explained that it was not initially included due to the natural break, which is the drainage course on the parcel. So staff is recommending that Council grant first reading of Bylaw 2020-38 as the proposal supports the strategies, objectives, and policies within the SSRP, RGMS, the MDP, and the AUC decision. Staff recommendations can be found on page 15. Staff is recommending first reading bylaw 2020-38 be granted, and that the public hearing be scheduled for January 12th at 9 a.m. Council does have three options before them. They can approve the recommendation, not approve, or approve an alternate recommendation. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Just a question, you say we have three alternates, we have, we're talking about a change to amendment, it's first reading, we don't even have all the information, what third one would we have? And again, I will state that, thank you for the information, but it was more than I need for first reading, I'll move first reading.
Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed?
I'll save my questions for later.
That's why there's too much information, you wanna start asking questions.
Yeah.
They left all the reports and
I-
plan evaluations and analysis till second reading and public hearing. Any other questions or discussion? I already said, is any councillor opposed? Sorry. Motion is carried. Motion for a public hearing. I'll move the public hearing be scheduled for January 12th, 2021. Any questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried.
Why are we? The question to ask. Why are we here?
We'll
How
move,
does this even come to?
we'll move to 2.31, council resolution tracker.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. On page 30 of the agenda package is the Council Resolution Tracker. This is just kind of to show the progress from the last council meeting. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the tracker, the progress on resolutions? A motion to accept as information.
So moved.
Deputy Reeve Clausen has moved. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. Move to 2.32, 2021 pay grid and COLA.
Good morning, Council. So on page 36 of the agenda package is the RFD for the 2021 pay grid. So this year we're recommending a 0% cost of living allowance adjustment, just based on the economy and just keeping tax rates low. Thank you.
Any questions regarding pay grid and cost of living?
I'll move the recommendations from the staff for the Wheatland County pay grid.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.33, interim operating budget and capital budget.
Good morning, Reeve Link and Council. My name is Matthew Kursiva, Manager of Financial Services. I'm here to present items 2.3.3 and 2.3.4. Firstly, I'll be presenting item 2.3.3, interim operating budget and capital budget, which you may find on page 40 through 68 of your agenda. Please note there's an addendum to Resolution 1 that was provided to you this morning. Previously, Resolution 1 reads that Council approves the interim operating budget 2021 to 2023 as presented. The amended Resolution 1 reads that Council approves the interim operating budget 2021 to 2023 as amended, which includes removing $150,000 from account number 2.22300277300 Association Funding Capital, and that this request be brought back to Council in the future for consideration. Developing the annual budget is a two-stage process in accordance with MGA Section 242 and 245. Firstly, an interim budget is approved in December to allow important projects to proceed or continue and provide a general plan for services, programs, infrastructure, and related costs until a final budget is approved in April. Once the Government of Alberta releases its budget, typically in March, the county can confirm information about available grant funding, requisitions, and make any necessary adjustments to its interim budget. A final budget is typically set in late April, at which time tax rates are determined and residents and businesses receive their tax notices. Budget details. The interim operating and capital budgets are set at $60.2 million and $23.3 million, respectively. The interim operating budget includes $12.2 million in requisitions. Upon approval, the interim operating budget and capital budget will be distributed to staff and posted on the county website for public viewing. Administration is recommending 1, that council approves the interim operating budget 2021 to 2023 as amended, which includes removing $150,000 from 22300 to 77300 funding capital, and that this request be brought back to council in the future for consideration. 2, that council approves the interim capital budget 2021 to 2025 with the exception for all unpaved roads projects totaling $8.7 million. And 3, that administration bring forward a 5-year road plan for council consideration and approval prior to any reconstruction of unpaved roads. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Matthew. Questions regarding either of the budgets?
Glenn here. What was the 150,000 pertaining to? The number just doesn't ring a bell with me this morning, sorry.
I can answer that question, Matt, if you'd like. So there was some discussion just around a trailer, a livestock trailer for the Standard Fire Association. So with that one, I know Fire Chief Borgon and Deputy Chief Jukes have been talking to Mark in Standard, and what they're going to do is just defer that one and just gather some more information. So what initially, I think it was $150,000, so there was going to be a truck, trailer, and some equipment on that trailer. So there was an inquiry done or asked about that, the cost of the trailer itself. So we did a little bit of digging, and we're just going to get some more information and just bring it back to council in the future for consideration.
Yeah, just to follow up with that and add to Brian's comments. Yeah, I think deferring would be a good decision. I talked to the vice president of the association and the reasoning, and he was surprised to see it on the potential budget. So I think it's okay for them to kind of get some funding in place and for council to understand whether this project is necessary or not. We have means right now to deal with emergency livestock issues on the highway. We have certain associations have agreements with hauling companies. There's agreements with producers in place to deliver panels. I mean, right now we're solving the problem without public funds. So I think we just have to have a really good discussion around if this next project is necessary.
So prudent to defer, and then we can get some more information and make sure the plan is appropriate.
When you're looking for additional information, did this project not start with the Ag Service Board? Or a request from the province, or I'm thinking back a couple of years, this has been an ongoing thing. So I'm thinking if you're looking for more information to maybe include the Ag Service Board too. Does that make sense, or are they just out of it now?
Russ has an emergency plan in place with number of producers on that plan with holding pens and everything like that, but I don't think that is the unit part of that.
I think we had.
I know there's agreements, but before the agreements, there was the talk of this trailer, and I don't know how the trailer surfaced again. So I'm just thinking, ask Russell and see just kind of what happened. Because it started with a trailer and we didn't have any agreements. We just had people, oh, something's happened, and people would just go try and fix it, right? So instead of getting a trailer, I'm thinking Russ got these agreements I'm aware of, but I'm surprised to see the trailer, and I'm just thinking it's prudent to ask Russ, these agreements are current. Do we need any augmenting of them, or how does it fit into the provincial emergency safety thing because of where we're at? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, good question, and this will just give us the time to explore that and make sure. I believe there may have been some grant funding previously for some of that training, and we'll just make sure that everything's being followed that we committed to. And
I'll just clarify though, the agreements are with the associations themselves, and
Right.
We don't have agreements. We have holding pen, producers have said you can hold animals here, but the agreements are with the associations and pool livestock. So just have that discussion later on, so.
Well,
John,
according to that email that came out yesterday, Standard would rather it was withheld for a while because they don't have their 40% anyways, according to what I.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
another issue.
that was,
They were surprised to see it, and they like to try to budget at least a few years ahead, so they have the money in place.
Councillor Bigger, you had.
Yeah, I wanted to have a discussion about, signage for the county. When I first got on the economic board, this was brought up, and it was always going to be at some point brought to council on, like a staggered project and brought into the budget, and I still don't see it in the budget, so I wanted to bring it up now. I think it's really important. It's been a thing in my, my wants. When you come into, especially on the main corridor, like I'm just talking main corridor right now, when you come into Wheatland County, you don't even see actually off the number 1 coming in from the city going, heading towards east. You don't actually see the sign, like on your first sign. You see, like, it's pretty sad that the Origin Industry sign is the one that, stands out. I know it's maybe bad timing, but we think we need to bring this to the budget somewhere and think about, and it's not, I know you're thinking it's not a necessity, but if we are trying to bring in more industry, bring in more resident, bring in more revenue, I think that sign is old. It actually says a lot about the county. Well, you had a sign that is more progressive, branded to what we're doing now. We have come a long way with Wheatland County, and I think to show it as you're driving in is something that is needed. Now, I know that we have done in-house things through economic development that has saved the county a lot of money, and I think some of those savings, and this is not just coming from me, this is coming from our whole economic board. They feel the same way. So it's not, and not that they know all of the budgets, but they do know that these are tough times, and they still feel that this is a priority.
I'm glad you raised it. I had been thinking as well, and I was hesitant to raise it because it's not like a critical thing, but the branding work that has been done for Infinite WC is so strong.
Yeah.
And I know at the time we were doing that, we had had some discussions around looking at the brand of the county as a whole and whether, like, we could make it more consistent with the Infinite WC imaging and branding.
Absolutely.
And sort of the feel of that. So if we're going to consider signage, I might, and if there's no appetite for it, I'm fine as well, but if council were to consider, and I would like to see if we could do it in-house as well and just build on what we've done with Infinite WC, or personally, I don't even mind if we use the Infinite WC. I don't know if there's economic development implications to, like, making that broader for the whole county, I would rely on some experts on that, but I love our logo and we have to keep this as part of who we are, but like Donna said, we have come a long way, and that Economic Development Board has come a long way and is being very progressive and working hard on investment attraction, and sometimes things like imaging can say something or
I
create
think
part
that
of that
number,
message.
that corridor, the number one highway is so important. I mean, even if you stagger it for, quite a few years in between. But I have been told that, well, we'll do that in the budget, and we'll stagger it, and we'll save up money every year, put so much towards it, but that's never been happening. So even if we get that far, we need a line item for signage.
Yeah, just to.
Matthew has some ideas
You guys
too.
go and then I can, okay. Yeah, just, I fully agree with what Donna's proposing. The only thing I worry about right now is, we are going through such a change in the economic development, and whether it's this year or next year maybe, because we do need time to do that overall branding. Yeah, we've branded the Economic Development Board and their goals and where they want to be in the next 10 years, but we as a county haven't really done that and narrowed it down to how we're selling the county itself, like not just for economic development, but for residents, recreation. So I think we need to look at it before we go and spend money. We have to know what we're going to spend money on. And right now, do you know what kind of sign you want out there? What's the county's slogan? I mean, we don't know that. So how can we spend money?
I know what I want.
I know what I want too, but
We could consider some funds in the budget, but make sure that that work is done first and that there's consensus. And it could be the Infinite WC branding was a very collaborative process, and even though it can be challenging to be like collaborative with the public health measures that are in place, we still could. And that work could definitely precede any expenditure of
province
funds.
isn't being collaborative on 80%. I'll even say 90% of what they're doing. So why do we need to?
Let's focus on the task at hand.
For me, I don't have a problem with signage, but like what, Councillor Wilson was saying, is we need to figure out what we need to do. I want to see a budget, I want to see a design, I want to see.
I don't want
And that's fine,
Yeah.
but in order to start that, we have to do something.
So if we
Because
have
for
to put
3
something
years,
down
I've been,
for a design and some kind of,
I'm good with asking administration to go ahead and giving us some idea what, like, for the start, 2 signs, like 2 nice signs, as opposed to what either that or we tear down the signs that we have that are like on 22X coming into the county.
And we'll just hire Tom. Wheatland County.
and yeah, there'll have to be different
Dinosaur suit, yeah.
No,
different
the inflatable
sizes
dancing
too,
man.
like.
But yeah, no, I'm good with that, like, let's start the process. Let's figure out what we need, if it's gonna be, you know, if it's gonna be $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 a sign, I have no idea, but.
I don't know either.
Yeah, but.
Let's hear from administration. Maybe they have an idea if there's
Yes,
a placeholder or something.
Because driving that highway every day, I've seen the monolith that Calgary's built, I've seen what the monolith that Rocky View's built.
Newell even has a nice
And
one.
there's some big, I don't necessarily agree with the size. I like, because we are rural and generally very conservative, I'm sure there's a compromise in there somewhere.
But size doesn't mean it costs more. So you don't know
Well,
that.
Well, I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know, but,
Yeah.
but there's maintenance on some of them too, if you wanna have greenery and things like that, like, we have to look at all that stuff and
Yeah.
see what is realistic. And, to be honest, a lot of the lighting and stuff that goes on now, you used to have to run power lines, a lot of that's solar now, which is
Yeah.
good, so.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of regulations with Alberta transportation that you have to put up with.
Never say.
So a couple things. I actually have documents that were just given to me with different tiers of signage, just for the upfront capital. And it depends on the design. So the way I see this going, is I would recommend that we do a separate resolution, for this, to direct administration to investigate new signage on Highway 1 corridor. And I think that's the best thing to do in terms of moving forward. However, what we did, so going back with the branding process and how we did that in-house, and we created a collaborative multi-step process to hit one of our objectives in the plan. I would estimate and venture a guess that we saved anywhere between $125,000 and $150,000 by doing all of that work in, rather than going to an external who would have put various resources on this, okay? So we did that and we allocated time to that. The way I see this on the flip side going forward is we would create a process whereby we would phase in and basically identify where all of our gateway signage is, create a recommendation of a phased approach. Obviously, the higher capacity volume corridors would be our first target. We have already discussed how we would do this, and we would have to work with Public Works, work with Alberta Transportation, find locates and the rest. We would also then go through a collaborative design process with our constituencies in the county in terms of bringing in various ideas on the story of Wheatland County. If we're really going to go into a branding process, we have the capacity to do this. So we would phase that in, create a design competition, create a committee internally, work with council. It would be a very collaborative, even more so than our business development branding that we would do. We have this entire process kind of mapped out. It's just a matter of, are we going to spend our first 3 months really pushing this? So if we were to do this today, we would start tomorrow on working preliminary steps to design our process, to go out to the community, to work with the existing COVID measures, to bring in council, to bring in community members, stakeholder groups, and talk about where we want to go with that branding. In addition, we look at kind of the different tiers of gateway signage that we have. So in that locate plan of where's our first target, which would probably be the Highway 1 corridor, 22X and the rest, we would look at various tiers of signage. So we're looking at the smaller signage, basic, no solar panels and the rest. Mountain View County has some. That's an estimate between 20 and 50,000, but that's not that's basic, no consulting fees. That's basic, not sunk in, right? So we can take out the consulting, the branding, and all of the rest. If we're looking at upper echelon tier of signage, larger, perhaps solar panels, no hookups or maybe some hookups for electronic, we're looking at $50,000 to $75,000 per, right? And then we get into the lit up signage, the Cadillac tier, you're looking at about $100,000 per. So there are various ways to do this. In terms of how we would approach it for council's information, we would definitely create a process plan on recommendations on which corridors to attack first, basically, execute the design, challenge the committee internally, committee externally, and we would go from there. So it's a collaborative process. We can definitely save costs on this in terms of our skills in-house, across the board, and council will be fully versed in what we're doing and how that process will unravel. We have designed, both Patrick and I have expertise designing gateway signage and designs in various other municipalities. So we're fairly confident that we can do this branding process, get the locates, get the phase plan for council's information sooner rather than later, should we start. Thank you.
Further to that, council, I'd recommend that this exploration and gathering of possible costs and things like that be done first, and then prior to the final budget, if we have costs, we can add that into the part of the calculation of the final budget. Approving the interim budget just allows us to administration to spend in January and move forward with projects, but we can add that to our final budget for consideration.
So I know that the interim budget sometimes allows applications for environmental work that needs to be done on major projects or things like that. We would likely need an application to Alberta Transportation for approval for this signage. So would we want to consider, I don't know if there are costs involved in that. I know there'd be staff time.
Right. In the phased plan, we will be recommending obviously the corridor first. So we're going to have to do some digging in terms of that process with AT. But of course, we've talked to Mike's team about this as well. So I think we're ready to go on that.
So we could approve outside the budget too, if there, say we wanted to start in January with those AT applications. If there were costs for that, we could pass a resolution to approve that outside of the interim budget. And then we could come up with a plan for the final budget in the spring and integrate any costs into that.
I think they'll need probably want to have a picture of what going in, wouldn't they?
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying, like, if we knew that it was X, I have no idea the scope of the cost of that. I don't think it would be significant, but I'm not positive, so.
Right?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Council, so the way I would kind of envision this is that, so a separate resolution would be passed today to investigate signage on the, Highway 1 corridor. And then we would bring back information to council, similar to what we did at the committee of the whole with council, provide council some pictures, a description after all the work is complete, and then bring it back for council approval at that point. If we do have an opportunity to either get it into one of the final budgets, we will. And if not, we could approve it outside of outside of the budget. Thank you.
Are we thinking just the main corridor? Or what about 22X?
I can still
the
explore some costing. What I'm envisioning is they'll bring back kind of for this type of sign, it will be this amount of money.
Then we can
And then we
decide.
can establish a budget, and if we can do 2 signs or like, that would really be at the discretion of council.
So I'd like to move that, we direct,
no, let's move to operating and capital first.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, we can deal with the budgets first, or we're discussing this, we can deal with this. There's no motion on the floor for the budgets at this point. You can go ahead, sure. Wait a minute.
I'd like to direct, administration to look into, signage for Wheatland County, on the main corridor.
Could I offer just a friendly amendment? Like
Through the chair, if you're gonna look into it, you may as well do, if you're just doing the main corridor, you're losing half of your.
Yeah, let them.
If you're gonna look into signage for all your
All the
corridors.
corridor?
All your main corridors entering you've got
Come
the
up with
21, the 56, the
And then
40,
they'll
the
see how
40,
they
all,
implement
like,
Okay,
if you're gonna
For
look
all
at it, look
corridors.
at the whole thing.
for Wheatland County.
Like if administration could just bring back a proposal, for exploring the costing for a phased, signage, and I was gonna ask if you would consider branding as part of that.
As branding, yeah.
And then that can come back and council can consider, there's likely going to be options, so like Ben said, depending on what size and, you know, what type of sign it is, that will affect the cost, and then basically it's gonna be setting a budget and figuring out how much we wanna invest this year and how, if we'd rather phase it in, or if we wanna get a bunch of them done. I don't even know how many we have, I can think of a fair number, yeah.
Hopefully you got that, Margaret.
That's a friendly amendment.
Margaret, do you have a sense for the motion? Essentially, sorry?
Okay, I'll review it. Councillor Bigger moved that administration investigate signage for all corridors in Wheatland County, including branding, and bring back proposal to council.
Thank you.
That's perfect, thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Yep, perfect.
Well said, great wording.
And that captures,
Anyway,
what you were hoping.
yeah.
Okay. Any questions on the motion or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Motion is carried. Counselor Wilson, you had fire capital. Did we address everything that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will make a motion that council approves the interim operating budget 2021-2023 as amended. Third.
Discussion? Yes.
Could we add to that, which includes removing 150,000 from GL code 2-23 to?
Yes. Counselor Wilson said as amended, and I think that was the amendment.
Okay.
That he
I
was
just- I didn't
referencing.
Okay.
remember which number.
Perfect, thank you.
As presented, with the amendment to defer the $150,000.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you.
oh yeah, that wasn't operating.
The capital or operating.
So just one note. Sorry, I'm finding the line. CAO Henderson, where our CRISP funding would typically be, if you could just point me to the page.
Be in the front.
Just one moment. I know we did cut that CRISP funding down to that I think it was 220,000. Matt, if you're on the line, if you could, Matt K, if you could correct me on that one. I'd have to find.
Yeah, hi,
I
Brian.
think we,
Yeah, it's on page 47 of the agenda. This is the council summary. So as you'll notice, CRISP funding has a dash, which represents 0. It's being replaced by the new community services program, right below that line for $200,000.
Perfect, thank you. I knew that I had read it, I just was trying to recall where. So just a couple of thoughts from my perspective. I know we've had some information from RMA shared about best practices for cost sharing and intermunicipal services and things like that. And so from my perspective, I just wanted to, in a public council meeting, share some of my rationale with the CRISP funding. So the current methodology with CRISP is not really aligned with best practice from what I've read and investigated in terms of cost sharing for services. I am aware that we do potentially share services. I know the county provides some services, and some of the our urban neighbors and municipalities adjacent to us also share services that our ratepayers use. What I think is so key, and I know I've heard consistently from this council, is that one of our top priorities is responsibility in stewarding the tax dollars that we're entrusted with. And so for me, it's really important that any fiscal agreements that we're in with other municipalities, there's some accountability tied into them, and that there's some rationale. So the CRISP funding, we were in a contract, 5-year agreements, not a contract, but 5-year agreements with the 3 villages in the town. Those did expire this year. And so I wouldn't mind if there are future conversations around what cost sharing is appropriate, what it could look like, what is the best way to address that. But that would need to be in the context of a pretty fulsome discussion that would include any services that are coordinated or collaborated on between municipalities. And I guess one of the things that has been a challenge for me is that there has been data that's been requested to help establish some of the use of some services that has been challenging to get or has not been provided. So I just, for full transparency, I did want to address this. I know we have talked about it, and there is some strategy that RMA has provided. There's actually even collaborative documents between RMA, AUMA, municipal affairs, things like that. I would like to take into account some of that framework or kind of strategy that's provided in those documents. But I did want to be transparent that this is changing. So I'm happy. That's purely just my own personal thoughts that I've been thinking as we've been going through this. So.
Hello, if we're into personal thoughts, whatever we do, whatever new agreement we come up with in the county, we have to remember that it's inclusive of all the county, of all the municipalities that are within the county, and to some extent surrounding the county. But it should be a total picture of the whole county and treat all ratepayers in the county as equal.
Yeah, and that's what I was referencing, Glenn. Like if it could, or sorry, Councillor Kester, if it could be a very comprehensive look, because there are a lot of services that the county provides as well. We make massive investments in transportation networks that other municipalities utilize. So there are investments in both infrastructure and services that different municipalities make. And so I agree with you, Councillor Kester. It would need to be comprehensive and look at whichever municipalities through analysis. And for me, it needs to be data driven and really a comprehensive look at it. So I know there's been some work. I know we had a couple councillors sitting on, one recreation committee. Like, I think there are some avenues or some mechanisms that might already be in place for looking at some of this. So, and then it will just be up to council what is the most appropriate way to deal with that, so.
Yeah, I agree as well. Like, you have to look at everything because some of these things focus in on a certain aspect of it, but there's so much more involved. And, definitely, you look at our budgets where we spend the majority of our money and it's very different compared to our urban partners.
Well, and a key difference this year that I know we're all fully aware of, but just for transparency, is our uncollectible linear tax. And Wheatland, just by grace, I guess, has never really had a significant uncollected linear tax. Lots of other municipalities in the province have. I've heard an estimate of nearing $200 million of uncollected linear tax by rural municipalities in Alberta currently. That will be verified in the new year, but that's substantial, and Wheatland County has never dealt with that, but that, I believe it was, CAO Henderson can correct me, I think we're at 12 or 15% of revenue was uncollected, so that has a significant impact on our budget, and the previous agreement that we were in didn't have any mechanism that would recognize that uncollectible element. It was based on 0.25 of a mil, but it didn't have any mechanism for if that linear tax that is assessed isn't collected. And given our current economic climate and some of the challenges to the oil and gas sector, I can't see that getting better anytime soon. So, and recognizing as well that our CURB program also supports a lot of recreation opportunities within this whole region. So, just wanted to have that conversation and be transparent, and happy to hear other people's thoughts or. Nothing else?
Nope, we're all good.
Any other questions on the interim operating budget? You have a motion on the floor. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. There were two other recommended resolutions regarding the budgets.
I'll make the motion that council approves the interim capital budget from 2021 to 2025 with the exception for all unpaved road projects totaling $8,700,000. Whatever it says there.
$8,710,000.
Not used to working in those numbers, it's hard to say them,
No, I don't ever spend that kind of money, so yeah, it's out of my language.
So open the floor to discussion on the capital budget. We did have some robust conversation around the capital budget. I know there has been gratitude expressed to our senior leadership team, but well, and to our whole administration team actually, just for the depth and for the work that was done on the budgeting and the prioritizing and the process as well.
Complimenting them like this every damn day.
I have to balance what they hear from you, Jason.
They don't hear anything bad from me.
I just want to say, like, from what we've looked at and what we're changing, it's not an easy decision to make, but I think it is the best decision for the county moving forward. I know it affects a lot of things in operations wise, that we're moving forward, and there is no lack of appreciation for anything that we've done prior. It's just looking into the future, I think it's gives us a little more, ways to do things different. I think the best wording. don't have to start a project when you don't have, you more freedom.
To me, it's a very strategic budget and
Better word.
really focused on long-term sustainability, I think, for Wheatland County, which is really important. So, and it's been a very challenging budget to address. We're in a really, I wouldn't say it hasn't happened before, but we haven't been in this type of situation in the recent past anyway, so. Any other discussion or any specific questions, anything anybody wants to address before we consider? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. The third resolution on page 40.
I'll move that administration bring forward a 5-year road plan to council for council's consideration and approval prior to any recommendations of unpaved roads.
Reconstruction. Reconstruction of unpaved roads.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Any questions on the transportation plan?
Just one question, I'm allowed to make suggested additions to the road plan? They're not on right now, but we can
Yes.
do that.
So I think the consensus was that because we needed some more time to discuss the transportation plan, that we would kind of take that out of the current interim capital plan. Council will address that separately, and then it would be integrated into the final capital plan in the spring.
So council will have perfect.
Yeah,
I'm
so
good.
administration's we're gonna go through the exact same process that we typically do, examining all of the transportation plans. I think we do have some transportation in here, there's bridges. There's some, but, we will certainly have more fulsome discussion.
Just a question to your motion, why have you got 5 years and not 10? Instead of a 10-year program, you've changed it to a 5-year program? It usually takes 3 years to get one road in place anymore.
So through the chair, actually truthfully, have purposely cut back on the 10-year plan. Excuse me, I don't find that that's a viable option to go with a 10-year plan when we're changing it consistently. We've never actually gone from a 10-year plan into construction. So 5-year, because we have a 5-year capital is what we listed, and 3 years secured. Response back from environment is quite a bit, significantly better than it was in the past. We've got roads we can plan ahead, shelf-ready projects. So there's not that concern like we had 2 years ago with struggling to find roads. I think 5 years is probably the max I'd want to recommend we go with.
That's why.
There you go. Thank you.
Another advantage, I think, could be expectation management, because sometimes it is hard to project out that long. And if things are on the plan, I think sometimes there can be expectations that are put in place, and then this way we have less expectations to manage if we're only, like, I think it will be, I think it's a good change.
Expectations, you're never disappointed.
That's right.
And council, just Brian from administration, also just to note, although we are going to be bringing a 5-year road plan to council, assuming this resolution passes, that doesn't exclude us from planning 10 years out. It's just something that council wouldn't see and kind of wouldn't be in a published document. But with our asset management program, it's going to be a lot more comprehensive, but just the more of the short-term plan is going to be presented to council. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the process for the road plan? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.34, 2020 Audit Service Plan.
Good morning, Reeve Lincoln Council. Matthew Kursiva, Manager of Financial Services. Secondly, I'll be presenting item 2.3.4, 2020 Audit Service Plan as information, which you may find on page 69 through 78 of your agenda. This report details the scope, schedule, and fees of the upcoming 2020 audit. The proposed schedule is as follows. Interim fieldwork procedures took place last week. Year-end fieldwork will take place from March 1st, 2021 to March 19th, 2021, and presentation and issuance of auditor's report and management letter to council at the April 21st, 2021 council meeting. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Any questions regarding the audit service plan?
I'll move as information.
Councillor Eggert has moved to accept as information. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.35, performance management policy.
Good morning, Reed Lincoln Council. Tracy Buto, GM of Corporate and Financial Services. I'm presenting agenda item 2.3.5, found on page 78 of your agenda. As you are aware, Council rescinded the past performance management policy, and in turn, the evaluation form was added as an appendix to the procurement policy. The Staff Policy Review Committee created a new performance management policy with updated forms and transferred to Corporate and Financial Services for final review and submission to Council. Administration is recommending that Council approve the new performance management for contracted service policy and that the form be removed from the current procurement policy as revised performance evaluation forms are included in policy 2.1.1. Are there any questions?
Council's wishes.
I move the recommendation. I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Wilson has moved the recommendation. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We can take a 2-minute bio break. We have a 10 o'clock call for the Safety Code Service Delivery update. So 2-minute break, maybe 5. Call the meeting back to order. And just due to a time commitment for somebody calling in, we're going to move to 2.3.7, Safety Code Service Delivery update. Unless anybody objects. Perfect.
Good morning, Council. Matt from Administration. I am just flipping to the appropriate page for the Park Enterprises Safety Code Service Delivery Update. So on page 123 of your agenda package, you have a request for decision outlining basically our services and what we receive from Park Enterprises. As Council knows, Park Enterprises is our service deliverer firm for our safety codes, and they're the authority of jurisdiction that we receive those services for safety codes permit approvals. On the line, we have Nicole Paget, Director of Client Partnerships with Park Enterprises, to provide an update. And the slideshow begins on page 126 of your agenda package. Nicole, are you available?
Yes.
Perfect.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate your time and look forward to giving you an update on what we've been doing over the course of the last year with Wheatland County. So as mentioned, I'm Nicole Paget. I've been with Park Enterprises for 13 years. I have the opportunity to work as a liaison with our municipalities and different stakeholder groups, the customers and ratepayers in the communities. We work to get feedback and make sure that our service delivery is continuing to be monitored and improved where we're able to. Our role as Park Enterprises with Wheatland County is that of a support role. We're fortunate to have close working relationships with the staff at the county, and together we're able to follow up on customer questions, any preliminary project inquiries or even complaints or concerns from ratepayers. In our office at Park Enterprises, we review building and private sewage permit applications and the design or the plans to ensure code compliance. Once those are approved, then we issue those permits and also provide backup support for the issuance of electrical, plumbing, and gas when needed. As noted in the information provided, we care for compliance monitoring on behalf of the county. So what that means is we follow up on all issued permits to ensure work has started, to see when they might be ready for their next inspection, to obtain a time frame for their project completion. And while doing so, we arrange access with the applicants and then schedule the safety codes officers for each day of their inspections. All points of contact are recorded, which then allows transparency between our team and that of Wheatland County. It enables us to ensure that we're both working with the most up-to-date information. In October 2019, the county updated your quality management plan. So this document sets the framework of different processes and the administration of safety code services in the county. The big change with that was the increased number of inspections as well as longer time frames. Longer time frames allowed for project completion. So previously a contractor, for example, would have 1 year to build a new home. Often that was unrealistic and it created an administrative burden to obtain extensions for the permits. Now with the new QMP, that home would have 2 years to be completed. This has proven to be a much more realistic time frame. One of the other big changes in the QMP was increasing the number of inspections for even private sewage permits. The addition of this extra inspection helps us to make sure that we can track if work started without a permit. It helps give life to a two-dimensional plan or drawing that was submitted, and often we can see any items that might have been missed on the drawing that may impact the system design, such as the slope or grade of the site. And we're also able to see if there's evidence of excavation, which is needed in order to conduct a thorough site evaluation and necessary for the system design. So Wheatland County is actually one of 2 municipalities in the province with this process, and it has definitely positively impacted the permit process as well as the private sewage industry. With COVID-19, that seems to be a popular topic this year. As with everyone, we've certainly felt the impact of COVID-19 and the various restrictions on our team and service delivery. This has been a continued moving target throughout 2020 as far as various restrictions and processes are concerned. Even since the document in front of you was drafted, again, we've had more changes to restrictions. So our office staff is working from home for the majority of them. Our office is still open to the public. However, the few that remain in the office are behind plexiglass dividers and wear face coverings. All of our staff go through a daily health check, and all sites that we visit are pre-screened and informed of our protocol to ensure their safety and comfort and that of our team as well. If we're needed, we are permitted to provide inspections through a video conference or call, which has been utilized on a select few projects, but so far we've been able to successfully carry out the vast majority of all inspections by physical site visits. The team of Park Enterprises, we have 3 management staff, 10 administrative personnel, and 9 safety codes officers. The administrative staff works as kind of the gatekeepers or the front line into the safety code system. They field calls, answer questions, provide checklists and tools to customers. They follow up to make sure all projects have the required permits. they schedule the inspections, and much more. The safety codes officers as well, they have a wealth of experience, and each with their own unique skill set. They're the ones who visit each property to complete the site inspection. Together, everybody isn't perfect, but there's certainly a hard-working group of people who bring their own perspective and skills, and everybody works very hard to collectively drive the company and set a high standard of safety in the industry. As mentioned, we've been operating since 1995, so this is our 25-year anniversary this year, and we've been able to provide service exclusively to 25 different municipalities, such as we do with Wheatland County. We've been able to maintain all of our partnerships with these municipalities, and we genuinely value these relationships and appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the communities in Southern Alberta. You'll find in the information a list of the municipalities that we are contracted with. This year in 2020, we have been able to accomplish different initiatives despite the many challenges we faced. One item that we had set up in the spring was specifically a roundtable meeting with the private sewage installers in Wheatland County. The purpose of that was to touch base, inform them of the change to the permit process, that of having the additional inspection, and get on the same page as far as expectations, what should be going into a permit application, and also receive feedback from their point of view, any frustrations they might be experiencing. That was put on hold due to COVID. We look forward to rescheduling that as soon as we're able. Since that time, all the contractors have been communicated with, so we were able to inform them of the changes of the process, but still look forward to a face-to-face interaction when we're able. We also had scheduled, again, a workshop or roundtable meeting with all of our municipal partners. We had the Safety Codes Council coming down to speak to the municipalities and have a day where we could ask questions, learn from each other, share ideas, and get clarification as to certain internal requirements, annual internal audits, and so on. That in-person session was postponed, and we're looking at hosting that in February on a virtual platform. A contractor newsletter was something we've been trying to do for a few years, and we just sent out our first newsletter to all contractors who have pulled permits in 2019 and 2020. The objective was to have reminders for contractors, what to put on your permit application, changes to different code requirements, upcoming changes in the industry, tips and tricks, and fields for feedback from them as well, frequently asked questions, photos that they might be running into in the field, just funny little things like that. So we sent out our first one in November. It was very well received, and we'll be doing that on 2 times a year in the fall and spring. We completed our 3rd year of a quarterly municipal newsletter. So again, we strive to provide education and ensure that everybody has the same information, that we're communicating regularly and letting you know what we're doing on your behalf. So this was the 3rd year that we have sent out a quarterly newsletter to all of our municipalities, again, informing you about what's coming up in the industry, upcoming events, code changes, statistics and numbers, what our team has been doing. So we've been doing that for 3 years, and we're moving to do that semi-annually in 2021. 2 big items that have really impacted compliance monitoring this year was monthly contractor reports. So in calling the contractors to make sure work has started, let them know when they need to schedule their inspection, contractors were getting frustrated that we were taking up their time to check on every project. So we send out a monthly report to every contractor. Currently, we're sending out over 800 reports a month. That monthly report tells that contractor all of his open permits, the status of them, if there's outstanding deficiencies, what inspection stage is next, and it has been hugely beneficial. The contractors have provided much positive feedback, and we're receiving more regular updates on all the projects, which just improves the compliance monitoring and frequency of inspections that we're able to perform. The development permit follow-up is another one. So when the county issues a development permit, we receive a copy of it and we make contact 2 weeks later with the applicant to let them know we received their approved development, answer any questions they might have, inform them of what permits are required for that scope of work, and receive a time frame as to when they plan to start. Will they be starting in the spring? Starting in 2 weeks? So we work with them, get them the information they need, and engage them right away in that process. That has really decreased the number of enforcement situations that we run into. People are pulling their permits, they're more engaged, asking more questions. That line of communication has really opened. So that's been a really big positive impact this year in that process that we were able to build on and roll out. Lastly, just some industry changes for 2021. At the Safety Codes Council, they established 2 new sub-councils, one for the electrical utility and one specifically for private sewage. Initially, the private sewage just fell into the plumbing sub-council, so now they have their own group to discuss issues specific to that industry. Also in 2021, we'll see a new standard of practice for private sewage, so a new code book in a sense. And I had mistyped in the information a new gas code, a new plumbing code to take effect in February 2021. It's actually a new gas code, so that was my mistake. A new gas code will take effect in February of 2021. So that's sort of a big nutshell of our team, what we've been doing with the county, new initiatives, and what's coming up in the industry. I'm happy to take any feedback or questions that you might have regarding our partnership or what we're doing on your behalf.
Any questions regarding the Safety Code service delivery? We do appreciate the information, Nicole, and on behalf of Council, I'd like to thank Park Enterprises for the services that you are providing for Wheatland County. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. On behalf of our entire team, we're grateful to have this relationship, and we work very well with the county and look forward to what we continue to do together. So thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Thanks so much.
Merry Christmas.
You too, thanks.
A motion to accept for information.
So moved.
Councillor Armstrong has moved. Any discussion?
I just ask administration if you could forward on the, just to me, I don't know if anybody else wants to see it, just the contractor, the contractor newsletter that they send out. You can just forward that on to me. That would be great. I'd just like to.
I wouldn't mind, actually.
No,
I actually wouldn't mind seeing just what goes out too.
Yeah.
We can distribute it to all council when we get them.
That'd be great.
I'm not sure if the rest of council wants them, but I'll, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We're going to move back to 2.36, master fee schedule policy. Starting on page 93.
Good morning, Reeve Lincoln Council. Tracy, GM of Corporate and Financial Services. The next item on your agenda is the review of the master fee schedule policy. Staff were asked in the fall to review the schedule in its entirety to ensure that the policy is up to date. I have 2 changes to add to the fee schedule since the agenda was sent out last week. On page 23 of the schedule, or page 118 of the agenda, on page 23 of the schedule, 9th row down, under the column, current fee charge, 4th row, we'd like to remove the word bi-monthly. I'll pull that up on the screen for
Regarding the
you.
waterworks and sewer plumbing administration fees.
That's correct. So, right where the mouse is, the cursor, we want to remove that bi-monthly. Further, administration would like to add an existing fee to the schedule to align with the guidelines, fees, and procedures for hamlet entrance tourism signs, section 7.15.1. Currently, the county charges $100 per year for a space on the sign and $50 per year after that. This is a housekeeping item, as the policy stated at the very end that the fee should be added into the schedule. Administration is recommending that this be added to the planning and development requests section found on page 16 of the schedule. Should council have any questions regarding the master schedule of fees, managers for each section are on the conference line. Are there any questions?
Just a comment, I appreciated the presentation, like having the current schedule and then the changes were made very clear, so that made it easy to see what was changing. Thank you for that. Any questions?
Thank you for the breakdown.
We're also recommending that we do this on an annual basis, and then this may prevent requests coming to council on a more frequent basis.
What was it about? So that'll be on 23.
I have a question. It's not about the pace, the schedule of fees, but more of an update on, debentures. Is there where it could be added as, the length of that debenture? Like when is it,
Like when Carsland finishes?
yeah, when it's finished, like an expiry date kind of thing? In there?
Through the chair, is that for council's information, or you'd rather have the public? Because we can supply council with the debenture end dates and all that sort of thing that we have.
For public.
For more for the public to understand when
more
the
for public,
debenture ends. Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
That's it. Any other questions?
We accept it as information, and thank you very much for the document, the paper document. I appreciate that.
Just the recommendation is actually to approve the changes and then also just, as Tracy said, to schedule a review on an annual basis.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. What he said. Any discussion? I appreciate that we're keeping it up to date as well and that it's aligned with other policies and that type of thing. I think that's good. For consistency, is anybody opposed?
Just not opposed, just a question. This changes will be up on the website? Is this document available to the public on the website?
That's correct.
Any counselor opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. We'll move to 2.38, Municipal Development Plan Review.
Good morning, Council. Megan Williams, Planner 2 for Wheatland County here to present the What We Heard report for the Municipal Development Plan Review. The report starts on page 129 of Council's package, and the What We Heard report itself starts on page 132. So in collaboration with the B&A Planning Group, County staff undertook the public engagement portion of the Municipal Development Plan Review. 2 webinars were hosted by Reeve Link and Mr. Voscariol, where the key policy areas of the Municipal Development Plan were discussed with members of the public. 2 surveys were also posted on the MDP's page, and 13 residents responded, not 11 as the report states. Staff's next steps will be to propose amendments to the Municipal Development Plan policies and objectives based on staff, council, and public feedback. These edits will then be reviewed by the internal departments before being brought before council during a planning and priority session, or CAL, whichever council would prefer. If approved, staff will post the What We Heard report on the Municipal Development Plan webpage. Staff is recommending that council accept the Municipal Development Plan report titled A Vision for the Future, reviewing the Wheatland County MDP What We Heard report as information. That does conclude my presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you so much.
Any questions regarding the MDP review, What We Heard report?
Just a comment that I appreciate all the work that went into it. And did get a couple of spelling mistakes that now, of course, I can't find it.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too. I think that was
there's
BNA's.
one. Page 147, last one, including is messed up. Very last sentence. There's more, there was a couple other ones, but I don't even know where.
Why don't we send anything to
Yeah, I'll just send it to you.
administration? I did.
It was good, thank you. It was very
Thank you.
appreciative.
I do have a question. Will we be posting this on the website or sharing a link via social media or something? I promised we would when we did the engagement. I said we would report back on what we heard, so.
Yeah, we certainly can. So we're going to post it on the webpage, and then I can ask the communications to post it onto the Facebook page, and onto the WC Facebook page as well.
That would be great, because I think it is a significant document that we're reviewing, and we did have some people, I know the numbers are low, but we did have some people that actually put a fair amount of effort into engagement for this, so I want them to know that we're listening, that we're taking what we heard through that engagement, and that we will be integrating that into amendments to the document. So I think that's a key part of the engagement process that we need to follow through with. So I appreciate it, and I do like the report as well. Any other questions? Looking for a motion to accept for information.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.39, Community Enhancement Regional Board Funding Priorities.
Good morning, Reeve Link and Council. This is Dave Rhymes, Community Services Coordinator. The report is a result of the Sorry, I just said good morning. Sorry. Okay, good morning. Report is a result of the Community Hall of Whole meeting on November 24th and the discussion around CURB board funding priorities and the considerations moving forward with the board. Under the terms of reference, Council may provide this priority for funding to the board for their consideration and their recommendations back to Council. As administration worked through this report, realized that the funding terms for the CURB board had not been presented to this Council, it appears. So felt it was important to include that terms of reference as well, just so Council is familiar with kind of how the board operates and and how they make recommendations to council for these funding requests. So the recommendation is for council to provide the priority for funding for groups and associations that meet the guidelines for the grant program, as well as council direct administration to draft operational guidelines for the CURB funding policy for an annual review of the terms of reference for the CURB board as well. That concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions.
Any questions regarding the information? I think this stemmed from some of our discussions during our budget deliberations.
Through the chair, did you say that you would review this annually?
I think the terms of reference could be reviewed by council annually, and if there's any amendments to that terms of reference for the board, they could be incorporated prior to the funding cycle.
Thank you.
It's a good mechanism just to have in place, like process-wise, so that we make sure that the guidelines are aligned with sort of the council of the day's budget priorities or community priorities, investment priorities, things like that. So I like the process that's outlined. I think it'll be good going forward and good for council awareness.
I think the process has worked good. I'm glad to see it being reviewed, but I like the process. I think it's worked, and I know our residents are quite thankful for it. Very appreciative of it.
Yeah, and a huge thank you to the board members that do commit to working on this board as well, because they really are critical to the whole process. So here's a two-part recommendation from administration regarding providing direction to the Community Enhancement Regional Board to give priority to funding Wheatland County community groups, and then a second part regarding the review of the terms of reference annually.
Make the motion that the council provide direction to the Community Enhancement Regional Board to give priority funding to Wheatland County community groups, associations, applications with meets the guidelines of the grant program. The second part, one as well.
Margaret, are you okay if it's one motion?
Yes, I am.
And further, that council direct administration to draft operational guidelines and amend the existing CURB funding policy that require an annual review of the CURB terms of reference.
Discussion. Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.310, Greater Shop SEPTED audits.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of council. Chris Perman, Senior Peace Officer, and I have Dean Young, Peace Officer, with me as well. And we are going to be presenting the Greater Shop SEPTED audits, and our request is that council accept for information the SEPTED on audits that were conducted on the Wheatland County Greater Shops. And so part of Protective Services' mission is to provide a deterrent to rural crime. One way we can make this happen is to make property and sites less attractive to people who want to commit crime. In order to make Wheatland County's Greater Shops less attractive, SEPTED audits were conducted over a period of 3 months on all the greater facilities. The principles of SEPTED are natural access control, natural surveillance, territorial reinforcement, and activity maintenance, and the report outlines what is observed. And it's also noted that we will continue on continuing doing SEPTED audits on all of our council facilities. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Officer Young to present, and starting on page 209 of the agenda package.
Good morning, council. Starting out page 209, just to reiterate what Sergeant Perman said. These audits were conducted through August and November of 2020. If we advance to page 210, just a brief description of what CEPTED is for the county. It's become an increasingly important aspect of both policing and the planning of our municipalities, especially with respect to the rise and the perception of the rise of rural crime in Alberta. Research has shown that CEPTED, when purposefully and properly implemented, can reduce criminal activity and the negative behavior that's attributed to unsafe and uncomfortable environments. Now, these aren't urban areas. However, we do have a number of residences that are in close proximity to our greater shops and other county buildings. So, in addition, CEPTED can help to create positive communities by improving planning and design decisions in ways that balances off public safety with the built environment. So this report isn't meant to be a definitive approach to addressing crime concerns or safety concerns with Wheatland County properties, but rather to show the benefits of CEPTED and the opportunities that it can provide to Wheatland County as we move forward in future efforts to address those criminal issues in the county and the growth concerns facing all municipalities. So if we advance to page 211, the process for our property security assessments includes a background investigation where we document and we investigate known history with the property, any known previous victimization, and any other associated issues that might pertain to the audit itself. We conduct site visits, so we look at the exterior, we look at the interior, and then the immediate physical environment surrounding the subject property. We conduct an analysis of the findings, and then we have our reporting processes where we generate a written report and then present to the associated stakeholders. To page 212, the relevant history for this particular assessment. Some of our shops are aging, some are relatively new. The types of structures that I encountered during this assessment were primarily prefab and modular buildings. They house road maintenance apparatus associated and assorted materials, and some have offices contained within the building. So the catalyst for the assessment was requested by Chief Administrative Officer Brian Henderson to audit the vulnerability of the Wheatland County greater shops. The Glenmore shop specifically has a history of break and enter and theft from that building. So we decided to take a general approach to assessing all of the greater shops, regardless of vulnerability and regardless of any history of intrusion. To continue on to page 213, one of the issues that was assessed was property signage. While some buildings have signs indicating the property is Wheatland County property, there are no signs other than the rural blue signs posted on rural shops. Addresses assist in landmarking during emergency reporting by members of the public. This has everything to do with the passive surveillance benefits of CEPTED, and it allows people that if they do see anything going on to report the actual physical location rather than just trying to give a general location to emergency services, and then it leads to a reduction in response time. So the recommendation would be to reassess the signage on all of the greater shop properties, and more specifically to give physical addresses that are visible from the nearby roads. There was some inconsistency with the signage. Site lighting. Now, site lighting is a bit of a double-edged sword. There is research out there supporting the improvement of lighting on properties, but at the same time, there's research that shows that if you light up the property, it provides better sight lines for very people that we're trying to dissuade from entering the property. So the lighting was variable from site to site. A lot of the properties lacked site lighting. Some had lighting that was inoperable due to lack of maintenance. So site lighting basically increases the ambient light that assists in the natural and passive surveillance. and obviously lighting issues become evident during night hours. If you look at the attached photos, you'll see basically the both ends of the extreme. The first picture shows a very well lit property, whereas the other picture shows a single light that is just above the man door, and the rest of the property remains very dark. Lighting can be mitigated through proper maintenance, and the consideration of additional lights are a recommendation as well. If we move on to page 215, I addressed some concerns with gates and fencing. So all but one shop was found to be left unsecured and open during daylight hours, and I'm referencing the gates here. And in all of the assessments that I did, the property investigations, there were no people present during those times, and I found the gates to be open. At no location were operators found during the audits, obviously because they're grader shops and everybody's out doing the road maintenance. So it'd be recommended that security be increased during times, just in terms of securing the gates. All properties require maintenance on the fencing, some of which have signs of patching in the way of repair, and I'm addressing the fact that they were patched, not actually repaired. There are sites that had ground heaving, and it's led to the fence starting to sag and to lean. And then there were some significant gaps in the fencing and frames as well. Broken barbed wire. So the pictures that are attached here are just examples of some of the vulnerabilities in the fencing that I've seen. The first one shows a huge gap between the road surface and the gate itself. The middle frame shows some of that heaving where the support poles are bending away from the fence, and then the final picture is obviously cut barbed wire. When I assessed on page 216, when I assessed the door security, I found that the doors were adequately secured for the most part. As we found with the Carsland Fire Department, just the addition of additional security around the doorknob itself produces a heightened sense of, or a heightened level of security to that one part of the vulnerable area of the doors. So numerous buildings found to be in good condition, lack some latch protection. These are simple fixes. Some didn't have any added protection. And this was the entry point in previous intrusions to other Wheatland County buildings in the past where they accessed the door. So additional security around the doors is something that we should be looking at with respect to upgrades to security of our buildings. Page 217 documents some of the findings with respect to window security. So all windows were found to be vulnerable, especially those that were accessible from the ground. So the concern is physical accessibility and then visual access to the interior where unauthorized users could take a look at what's inside the building just by looking through the windows. So again, one of the recommendations would be to increase window security, utilizing supplementary security devices and regular maintenance inspection. So for example, one of the windows I found was broken, and the materials that are used regularly for those windows was removed, and some very poor patching had been put into place. So regular maintenance schedule for doors, windows, and associated entry points to our grader shop should be conducted on a regular basis. Page 218 highlights some of the overhead door security issues. Numerous of the overhead doors were found to be unsecured, and by unsecured I meant that they were closed, and in most cases the chains were disengaged. However, the automatic door openers still operate, and if a person can access those door opener devices, then the doors are openable. So all of the overhead doors were automated, so they all had the automatic door openers, and Thus, they have a locking function when closed. And they have the ability to disengage the chains, as I mentioned, but they can still be opened. So I would recommend that we improve overhead door security by the use of supplementary security devices, and a procedure requiring site operators to engage those devices. 219, page 219, highlights some of the issues with the offices. Now, not all of the buildings contained offices, but all of the buildings that did contain offices were found to be insecure. Now, that said, there wasn't a lot of vulnerability there with unsecured offices, just primarily because there was nothing of value stored in those offices. But I did find some computer equipment. It appeared fairly old, and I don't know if they were actually in use. However, if that can be seen from an unauthorized user looking through windows, it might just be enough of an incentive for them to gain access to the building, regardless if they get anything. So the offices don't show much of a vulnerability for Wheatland County. It's just another one of those things that we want to reduce the sorry, I lost my train of thought. So it will reduce the chances that somebody's going to see something of value and will motivate them to enter the building. So that concludes my findings in general. I believe the detailed report has been submitted. Does anyone have any questions regarding the Greater Shop SEPTED audit?
Any questions from council?
No question, but more of a, when we're like, we're just thinking of Carsland Fire Hall, the new one, and where it's located. And I know in design, generally windows look pretty, but like simple things as a garage door, instead of putting the three lights at the eye level, if you put them up 2 or 3 panels higher, you still get light, but you don't have somebody that can look in. And then things like offices with a ground level window, I think we should be looking at, because if it's not required for an escape reason or whatever, maybe we shouldn't be putting windows in at all.
Through the chair, so Councillor Clausen, that's absolutely correct. And I did note that there were a number of our buildings that have windows that are high up, over 6 meters. And you're right, that provides the adequate lighting for the inside. And unless the intruder has access to a ladder or any kind of material that can be used to stand on, that would be my recommendation as well, if we are going to go with windows, that we put them high up enough that they're not accessible.
You just catch one of these guys and string them up, just as like you do with a magpie.
They used to hang them in the harbor, and they'd hang them in cages so everybody could see them.
Yeah. No. Only if they don't have a mask. No mask, you're allowed.
Any questions on the Greater Shop SEPTED audit?
I do agree with the overhead doors and the windows being higher, because there is nothing worse this time of year, if you're facing east or facing west, when you're working in there, to have that sun coming through there, you have a hard time. Every time you turn around, you get that sun right in your face. So I do agree it's better to have them.
And sometimes in a shop, it's, if you can, like they got those, I would say skylights, but they got those things that sun comes through those round tubes. It provides all the light and like gives you better light.
So my question, I don't know who can answer this, maybe Brian, I don't know if the officer can answer it. Now that you've got this report, we're aware of it, these numerous infractions and upgrades that need to be done. What's the timeline on getting that done before our insurance company steps in and says your insurance is not valid because you haven't followed through on the recommendation?
So Matt from administration here, just to supplement and finalize the presentation from the peace officers. I think it's important to note that these recommendations are high level best practice, high on the radar best practices. for crime prevention through environmental design. I think it's noteworthy that our facilities are safe. These recommendations, again, go above. So if we were to act on those recommendations from a safety perspective, it would be kind of high on the scale through CPTED. And I just want to note that as well, we'll be conducting audits on our fire properties next year, and just bringing back kind of the information that shows how well designed they are, or any kind of like lighting or any minor fixes or recommendations that we could undertake. And I think that it's noteworthy just for the public to know that we do have high-level, safe facilities that our employees work in, and that they can access these services for their own properties to ensure that they have a safe property, really stressing the important point of the rural crime component that we're working towards mitigating as much as possible. As for the insurance question, I am not entirely sure on that, but we can certainly get information on that.
I know I've had this issue with a couple of insurance companies on some of my rentals, that once those problems are pointed out and something happens and it's determined that it was part of that issue, they're a little hesitant on following through. So I'm not saying they have to fix all of it, but they certainly need to have a schedule in place for the maintenance and the repairs, so that they can show that, yes, we're aware of it, and yes, this is the schedule, and this is what is being done. So I'd look into the insurance side of it anyways.
Absolutely.
To me, some of this stuff could be part of an annual inspection of sites and routine maintenance, really. You know, it should be kept up, and you know, if a fence is down or whatever, it's not a big deal to fix it. I've seen it where cars go through fences in our transfer sites and we get them fixed, so it should be no different. You know, if it needs to be fixed, fix it. I mean, we have budgets for that, I'm sure, or if we need to address it a different way, but it's a maintenance thing, really.
Yeah, I want to thank the peace officers for doing this. I think it is going above and beyond in terms of risk mitigation, and it's also just taking advantage of the sort of specific subject matter expertise that we have on staff. And I think the fact that we can implement some of these things with relatively low cost, I'm assuming all of the things that can be kind of done without a huge cost are already being done. And then, yeah, I know that they do like regular maintenance and inspections and that type of thing, but I think this actually goes above and beyond what we would typically see. So I'm assuming once these are done on a facility, then it's just sort of implementing it in, like you said, as part of that maintenance and ensuring things are handled. So thank you to our peace officers for using your expertise to do this on our own facilities. I think it's also good that we're doing this and setting an example in the community and trying to mitigate crime where we can. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair.
For razor wire on top?
I am looking for a motion to accept the audits as information.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any other questions or discussion? Motion is carried. Move to 2.311, pipeline crossing policy update. Good morning.
Morning, Council. Mike from the Transportation Department. So you'll see on page 220 of your agenda package is the pipeline crossing policy update. So Transportation Department just looked at a couple of our policies to update here. We're doing a full review of them this year, but these are two that we felt were better to get done here before the new year. So pipeline policy here, basically we went through and updated a lot of the verbiage in it. I think it was a number of years before it was, since it was looked at. Primarily, one of the major changes was we had a very tight timeline for pipeline companies to move their pipelines at our request. So it was a little unreasonable, actually. It was like a 30 days or 60 days. So we moved that to half a year, allowing them time to budget for it and that sort of thing. So that's one thing we heard the last couple of years that was a concern. Yeah, that's the primary change. There's a few other ones, but if council had any questions on them.
Any questions regarding the revisions?
These just reference oil and gas pipelines.
That's correct, yeah, these are not water pipelines.
Move that council approve the amendments to Pipeline Crossing Policy 9.4.7 as reflected in the attached draft.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.312, gravel operations policy update.
Okay, thank you. On page 233 of your package, you'll see the gravel operations policy update. This one was spurred basically from our conversation earlier this year where we were looking at private sales and that sort of thing with gravel operations. We looked at updating the whole policy in addition to those few changes. So some key changes you'll see here are the reduction from maximum tonnage for private ratepayers to buy is from 400 down to 200. A definition for basically how the gravel can be purchased, kind of eliminating some of the crossover and we had a few multi owners on one parcel, and we just kind of cleaned that up with some wording changes here. We actually are now taking it, I think everyone knows, down to a 3-year or 3 per year sales cycle. So we'll do one in the spring, summer, and fall. Those dates, once the council approves here, will be advertised out with plenty of lead time for the ratepayers to buy them and set up their schedules, and updating some of the pricing that was in here to move them to the master fee schedule. If there's any questions from council?
Any questions? I think it did a good job of mitigating some of the safety concerns that were identified and potential liabilities, so but still maintains that provision of service, so I think
I don't have an issue with the policy or the changes, but I had a ratepayer approach me on that Neglorn pit, and the issues a little off of this, but it's gravel, so I'm gonna bring it in there. The issues this fall that they've had with hunters accessing their land off of the through our gravel pit at Neglorn and off the road allowance going into it, and they wanted to know what we could do. And I know they've contacted the county a couple of times because of trespassers in there. The signs have been the signs have been knocked down. The private property sign is still up there, but the no trespassing signs have been knocked down. They're laying in the ditch, so whoever's going in there is ripping the signs down. And they were wondering if we could take a look at the signage going into the pits and reaffirm the signage that on all accesses, especially the Neglorn pit that they're concerned with. They wanted to put gates, and I said, well, it's a road allowance going through the middle of it. You can't put a gate on that. It's public access. So they're going in there and then accessing through the gravel pit onto their private land that they have no control over. So just, you know, we don't have a policy for trespassers, that dealing with that, but they said at least get your signage back up so that when we talk to them, we can tell them you're trespassing. No, there's no trespassing. There's no.
and I think trespassing is addressed in public behavior bylaw, I think.
Well, they don't have much.
But you do need the signage, I know, to back that up unless they've changed that law.
I'll locate that right now in the behavior bylaw.
And just Brian from administration, what we could do is we could follow up on that and just provide council an update just when it's completed.
That would be great. Do you want a resolution? Why don't you do a resolution for that first?
No,
No? Okay.
I've got a resolution for this policy.
Okay. We can leave it up. It can make it easier to track, but if you're, it's totally up to you. You're putting a motion on the floor for the gravel operations policy? Any questions regarding the updated gravel policy? Gravel operations policy? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.313, Muirfield additional lots.
Yes, thank you. On page 245 of your agenda package, you'll see the RFD. Some additional supplemental information was, I guess, handed out here and emailed out yesterday regarding the sales. So basically, this is, back in July, council had approved the sale of some county-owned lots in phase 2. Apparently, a number of those have sold, so this is a request from the realtor to add to that inventory that they'd be able to actually sell. So you can see some of the details on here. And in your supplementary package here, you'll see the lots that are requested, a map of them. Basically in the northwest portion of the county, or of the development, all the way along there. So as part of our process here, we'll, if council approves, we'll go through and do a site inspection inventory review, just like we had with the previous lots, just to make sure that there's no deficiencies on them and that we don't sell something that needs major work.
For a motion to include the additional lots in the agreement.
Before the motion goes, I thought we had a motion from council with the previous developer to preclude selling these until there was a wastewater solution found. I realize that we're now but I just want to make sure that's either taken off the books, or whatever. I don't know if it's still, or what it was, or if it's specific to that developer or not. We'd have to look into that.
Yeah, through the chair, I believe that was in the direct control district, that restriction that was in there, and I refer to GM Biscariel to speak on that.
Yeah, and I do believe it is in the DC district, and I can confirm that, but this won't juggle anything up, so to speak, right?
Just as long as if I get the question asked, I say yes.
That's a good point if we need to amend something in
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. And we are currently, just for council's information, and you probably do know, but we are reviewing the DC district. It is a longer process because there are so many moving parts that we need to account for in the district. I mean, for example, the governance structure of, condo versus HOA and the rest. So we're working on that.
I like this. I mean, it's nice to see that we're getting some of these lots moving. I do know I get lots of people asking me questions about them, and I refer them back to the developer. I do know the realtor, sorry, not the developer. And it is moving forward, and there's a lot of people looking in there. So I'll make the motion as presented.
Any questions or discussion?
Just to Councillor Clausen's, I had the opportunity to talk to Dave Whittle, who is the owner of the Muirfield Golf Course. And he is the first guy, because I talked to him about his assessment and that. And he is 100% good with his assessment, which is, I find absolutely mind-boggling, but it's good to see. And I mean, he is happy, loves the way the he's being handled by the county. And, yeah, so it's all good. I have a question to administration about how many houses can we, if at the current rate of hauling sewage, like using this hauling sewage, how many houses can we build to before we can't keep up anymore?
We need a second operator, trucker.
Yeah, because we're doing it on a cost recovery, we should be able to accommodate.
Can a cars land accommodate it though?
Well, so, yeah, so through the chair, we do have actually, one interesting thing that we found through the process here is that during certain times of the month, they actually have to run 2 trucks, on there, which was not made aware to us anywhere in the process for the previous, hauler. So we bought 2 trucks, we have 2 trailers, we've operated them already. That's well enough to keep in any sort of, lot, development that we have in here, especially with the timeline it'll take to get those online. As far as the Carsland site, definitely, like I say, there is, most of the capacity used up in Carsland, as we know, with this, input, knowing that we're going for a replacement, solution in Muirfield, knowing that we're building, the big thing is we're building a lagoon in Rosebud. That's gonna be able to take the majority of this. We're upsizing that slightly in Rosebud, so that does take, that will take some of the overage if we did get to a limit where Carsland, with all the developments going on in there, is at the max capacity. We have other alternatives, definitely.
So we have redundancy within the county. You could look at other.
The other one, yeah. So does, the county wanna actually purchase Spearcraft so we could get it rolling too? I'll rescind that.
Hypothetical question. Deputy Reeve Clausen has a motion on the floor. Any other questions regarding the additional Muirfield lots? So administration is going to confirm that there's nothing in the DC precluding us from entering into agreements or offering these for sale. That will be confirmed.
One question, that can be done in-house, right? We don't have to get engineers traipsing all over the place for looking at the lots and all that kind of stuff. We can do all that.
Well, with that, because we are looking at the condition of some of the storm pipes, we may need to do some cammering. There may be some, inputs from the engineers on that. We'll look wherever we can to do the in-house, but the actual standing there and looking at the lot, yes. No, and
We don't need an engineer going, yeah, I can do a report on that.
Right.
I'm assuming those expenses that would be allocated to that Muirfield reserve as well. Like, I'm assuming that we're keeping things sort of partitioned and.
Oh, for sure, everything's going to that.
Retaining walls on some of these lots or whatever, would that be a condition of sale, or is that something that the developer would have to put in before they sell it? That's kind of something, but I don't understand that part. If the back lot had to be terraced or something like that on some of these, would it be up to the development of that individual lot?
It'd be up to whoever buys it, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
I would think so.
Just through the Reeve to council, there are design guidelines in place lot by lot. What those design guidelines entail is the materials, the facade of a exterior, as well as the submission of a landscaping plan. So in that landscaping plan, through the evaluation done by a third-party IBI group, should they submit a landscaping plan in the past, should they have, or when they did, that would have been approved through them. So the terrace or whatever. Now, obviously, you would put a retaining wall in through the developers, obviously observations of the gradient of the land, et cetera, the slopes, any water, any drainage issues, and that terrace or that retaining wall or however it was designed would have been approved through those landscape design plan through the design guidelines. We're continuing with the design guidelines, so it keeps the character of the community intact. There's all the other elements, spillover elements that come with the benefit of design guidelines for the community. In the provision where it asks for landscaping plans, we're going to ensure that that remains so that that character still is consistent throughout any future builds. So that's basically what I know based on the retaining walls will be embedded within the design guidelines that are required.
I guess a clear question would be then, do we as the county being the developer now have to put in infrastructure to sell some of these lots, as in a retaining wall?
That I would not be able to answer at this point.
So maybe I could speak to that, and actually just to add, supplement with Councillor Eichert's question about engineering. So with this review, and I failed to note, the specific part of it is a building grade plan. So building grade plan developed by our engineers to submit to potential buyers of this, saying what they need to build their lot up to. Basically, that is a requirement of all of our, in conjunction with the landscaping plan or the architectural controls, all that sort of thing incorporates. So yes, we do need engineers to be able to develop that plan so we can sell a lot that if somebody doesn't build to that lot capacity or that lot design, then it would be, non-compliant. And we want to make sure that everything we sell here has got the proper grading to allow for off-site
Definitely
drainage.
building grade plans. Yeah. And in municipalities that don't have that, and it does not work.
Exactly. That will be added on, that, I would assume would be added on. If there's $5,000 with engineering on lot 101, that gets added on to that lot price.
So I guess, like,
Should be, I would.
yeah, everything through the sales of this, is put into the Muirfield Fund. So how that is reconciled at the end of it has, not been, because we have set prices from the Realtor right here now. That doesn't incorporate our engineering review currently.
Maybe it should though, maybe there should be, if they're selling a lot for $110,000 and there's gonna be, we are going to incur $10,000 for the engineering in order to allow that lot to be sold, and that should go on to that.
A developer would do that. Yeah, a developer.
I'm just trying to, because.
The developer or the
Right,
builder?
it should be, yeah, and it should be.
Pardon me?
The developer or the builder, or the developer?
The developer would have that all figured out beforehand, and it would be incorporated into the lot price, and I don't think we should do any different.
Because if we do it the other way and put it into a, and pull it out of that deal, we're actually taking money from our, taking money from ourselves, and that's, a developer would never ever do that.
No.
If you want that lot, it costs X amount of dollars for us to let that lot go, that should go onto the lot right away, and that should be somehow communicated with, to the Realtor. That there could be, I don't know if there could be a caveat on it that it's gonna be $110,000 plus engineering fees. There are no engineering fees, that's $110,000. It does, just in my mind, I think we have to think.
Cause yeah,
about
those site plans and all that stuff would all be,
as opposed to-
those site plans and everything would all be incorporated into a lot when you buy it in any other municipality. No, it would be,
So my assumption, and I could be wrong, but when the breakdown of like list prices was provided, obviously some lots are higher priced, some are lower priced. I would assume that, those are sort of market-based pricing. And then that, because we are making revenue off of the lot sales, that like, that, engineering would be a potential expense off of that revenue, is how I looked at it, and that it wouldn't necessarily have to be on top.
It sort of
Because
has
if
to be.
she has market priced it, like typically your market price would include that to your, like, to your builders, right? Because your developer would have already integrated that into your market price.
As long as the engineering's already figured into that price, into that. So if we put 5 or 10 lots in an area, as long as our engineers have looked into that, and that 5 or 10 lots, and it's $50,000 for the engineering for those 5 or 10 lots, that has to be added onto those lots, because if you put it into the end, then the developer, us, are paying for that. Not the, you want this, not the home builder to, or the buyer to pay for that engineering. You don't want to come out of the profit at the end for engineering. I don't want to pay for it. Exactly. So, yes. Neighbor does. There's a neighbor. Right.
So just through the chair, just for some context, we do have some very preliminary pricing on these engineering grouping, and we're looking around less than 500 per lot to do the engineering building grade plan and that sort of thing. So it probably won't change the, I know it won't change much of the $100,000 sale price to add another 500. So we can just add it to the listing price
and
the requirements of it.
I appreciate this discussion, because I know there is some issues with landscaping going in some of these areas, and definitely need the footing plan, you need all that stuff done, so when it's done, it looks right, and the drainage is right, and you don't have neighbors flooding out neighbors, that's the basic of it. That all needs to be done, and if it's included in the lot price, I'm absolutely fine, as, on top of.
And I think for
capital
transparency for the community, any of those fees that are recovered by that method would just leave more finances in place for things like a wastewater solution or things like that. So it's not like, I just want it transparent for the public that we're not trying to increase like Wheatland County general revenue. This would just increase the amount of, revenue that would be available for a wastewater solution in that reserve from lot sale.
So then, with that train of thought, we get all the engineering done on all these lots, so they know what they need. They go to sell, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if we get another batch of 5 or 10 we want to sell, we'll just do the same thing going forward. And it makes it completely fair, and it's got a little more income for the whole development overall, so.
There is a motion on the floor to approve a request to include the plans, as presented. And so there would just be a slight amendment to integrate, engineering fees into the recommended lot sale prices. Any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.314. This is included in the council package as an addendum or in the revised council package that was posted. Starting on page 240, oh, sorry, wrong page. Starting on page 249. This is a follow-up to a previous resolution for RMA and FTM.
Good morning, Council. On page 249 of your agenda package is the personal medical cannabis production white paper that we had previously discussed. Direction was given at the end of November, beginning of December, to undertake some research and draft a briefing on the personal medical cannabis production. Various issues from various perspectives, from land use, environmental, social, public safety, and the rest. So we had drafted that, which is included in the appendices of the report. And also part of the direction was to draft a resolution for the rural municipalities of Alberta, as well as one that would work cohesively with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, as this is, as explained in the white paper, a very much a federal issue, a municipal to federal issue. So what you have before you is a two-part resolution. One that authorizes admin to forward the proposed resolution to RMA with the attached appendices white paper, highlighting the issues to District 2 for consideration, and further that council authorize admin to forward the proposed resolution, highlighting our concerns to the FCM under Category A municipal federal issues. There is a deadline for FCM to submit resolutions, and that's coming up actually, so we wanted to get that ahead of the curve. But also in the resolution that you'll see on page 252 to 253, we are asking the RMA, so RMA's part in this whole thing is to collaborate with FCM and to advocate to Health Canada. So it really captures the position of RMA and the power of what it can do in terms of the collaboration with the FCM body, and then the advocacy that they can undertake to Health Canada with regards to both existing license holders undertaking some municipal process. They shall undertake the municipal processes that are highlighted, the gaps in the white paper, but also prior approval at the municipal level is required for personal cannabis medical use production. So you'll see in terms of the member background, we've highlighted what we've done within the resolution, and then we go into the appendices. So there are various steps here, but we think we can cover them all with this two-part resolution, both to go to RMA, to go to FCM. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm available.
For a little bit more context, RMA did review this as well, just to make sure it's aligned with resolution policies, and I also just floated the idea at the directors meeting. So we will be bringing it to the district meeting, but we did bring it to the district directors, and there was some support for it there, and clear indication that we're not the only county that has dealt with this. Mountain View County's had substantial issues with this same situation, so I will be asking them to consider seconding the resolution for RMA.
One question, in the whereases, the third one from the last one, under this license, one can cultivate up to 485 but you can get somebody, should there be something else in there, the fact that, cause I could get Scott to grow it for me. Like, so there's not even any personal, right? Rules say that I can get an outside grower, I can get the license, and I can have somebody else grow I'm just wondering if there should be something added on to that, because this is not even like, at that part, you're already another person away from it, right? This is not, I can be growing it, I can be growing 485 plants, and it has nothing to do with my personal deal, right? And now I am a commercial grower, but I'm growing off of his license. That's 100% legal, am I not right? I do not have to be the personal grower.
Just for the record, I do not have a license.
No, just, you know what I'm saying, like that is in the rules, that is, I don't have to, I can get a license and I can pass that license on to somebody else. So if I have that, I have the license, and I may live in town, and I've got my grow op out in the country because I've contracted the guy to grow it for me.
And if I got a license, I could get that contractor, that same contractor. So he
I
could
don't
have,
know how much that one guy can grow, but I know I've read it in the regulations that it doesn't necessarily mean I know you don't have to do it, so I'm just trying to
checking
think
really
that should not
quickly.
be addressed somewhere in there. Am I making too much of this? I don't know. It's the fact that you can grow 485 plants is ludicrous. I understand that.
Yeah.
But it, like, somebody in town can have the license and I could be growing it out in the county. So it's not a problem to the people in Strathmore, but it is definitely a problem to the people in.
But it says in the whereas, I don't know about the regulation, but it says here, 485 plants at home, not at Joe's place.
No, but I don't have to.
You can designate as
You
what
can
I'm
designate a
finding.
grower. So I think in my mind, that's a problem.
you shouldn't be able to designate a grower.
Well, I'm just thinking that that has to be mentioned somewhere,
So,
that is really bad.
so, and great point. In my mind, I think, to that point, I think that the resolution does in fact have a good capturing mechanism for that, because what we are doing is we're advocating, and we're stating that there are gaps in the process. There is no shall go through a municipal process. So when we have the advocation methods to both RMA and FCM to Health Canada, we're asking that the local process be a requirement. So through that local process, we'll have the ability to then determine from a land use perspective which facilities or what have you will have the up to 485 plants within it. So from that perspective, we'll be able to evaluate from land use, nuisance, adjacent. We'll have the ability to capture where these facilities are proposed to go, and it will be up to the development authority at some point to either approve it or not to approve it, right? So within the municipal mechanisms that we're asking be a requirement in this, we will have the ability then to address the locations of where these proposed personal grow-up medical facilities will be, where if it's at a residential facility or if it's proposed to be quite a larger facility. We feel comfortable in the fact that with municipal processes as a requirement, we'll be able to address that concern.
You've got a personal medical marijuana license issued to the town of Strathmore.
So,
It's being grown out in the county of Wheatland.
can I,
How do we capture that?
can I propose a solution? So,
Yes.
I haven't researched this thoroughly. I didn't actually know about this until you just said it now. So, but I do see on the Canadian website, for producing cannabis at the same location, there, you can designate, that's clear, you can definitely do that. And there can be 4 registrations for the production of cannabis at the same location. So you could be looking at almost 2,000 plants. So what I would propose is that we just to put the scope of the problem, like to contextualize how big this could be, under that whereas that you referenced with the 485 cannabis plants, if we could just amend the resolution as presented to include and further given that there can be 4 registrations for the production of cannabis at the same location, resulting in potentially 4 times 485, I'm not doing the math, 1,940 plants in one location. I do think that that's pertinent to have in there. Matt, are you okay if we just add that to that whereas? And then we may have to add one more reference, would be the only other addition to the resolution.
So we're looking at, whereas under this license, one can cultivate up to 485 plants, but the capturing mechanism specific to Councillor Eichert's point is, and further, given that
People can designate other growers.
The same goal.
Well, further, like, maybe we can, like, if we just get,
That site could handle up to 4 growers
yeah, and that,
as per regulation and
and that individuals can designate a grower and could potentially result in, and given that the government, like, federal government allows for registrations for the production of cannabis at the same location. Matt, I can send this to you.
If you designate a grower, no matter where you designate it from, if they change it so that they must comply to all municipal regulations, doesn't matter if they put it out in the county, they still have to comply to our land use.
But they have to tell us.
And that is captured.
Right, as long as they have to tell us that where that, the growing is going to occur, then we're okay.
No, because the therefore be it resolved. The therefore be it resolved specifically references the production facility, so if somebody were designating in the county, that should capture that. And really, that would be something that through advocacy, it would be up to the federal government to figure out how that's addressed.
We have to know that you going in town are designating me as a grower. There has to be that, because if you just say, yeah, I'm the grower, and I don't tell, and I don't.
I don't know, development permits aren't issued to people, they're issued to the land, are they not? So the land has to be suitable, not the grower. So if the land is deemed suitable for 480 or 2 growers, 3 growers, 4 growers, at the time of that land is applied for, it would be noted of what is on it, who actually is doing it. I don't think is the main concern, because I always thought these permits or development permits belong to the land. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my impression always. So it doesn't really matter who you're doing it for. It is the land itself, the site itself, is it appropriate?
Absolutely, I agree, Glenn, and I think that's captured in, the key part in here is the therefore be it resolved, and it is captured in there where it indicates advocacy for confirmation of municipal compliance for personal medical cannabis production facilities. So that would focus on the site or the location, as Glenn, or as Councillor Kester is referencing. But I do think, just for the context of the scope of how big this could be, if council would consider, when a motion is made, just to amend the resolution to include the just a statement about that you can designate and that there can be up to 4 registrations on one site. So,
Should be information, for sure.
yeah, it's definitely critical.
and then we would just add one more reference to where we're pulling that from.
I'm good with that.
Any other questions regarding the resolution?
Just, I'll ask this, so say devil's advocate and me is asking this question, so we, get some motion going forward and the government changes it, will this change any of the existing sites? Is there a way we can try to get these, they always do this grandfather clause, and I don't, is there a way we can try to get rid of that grandfather clause? Because we didn't get any notification of these, we didn't get any of this stuff. We should be, try to push
That they
for
should have to apply
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it just lets it happen.
So,
And gives them more
It does
value,
say
actually.
for existing license holders, so it does
Okay.
address
Because
existing.
you think in the economics of it, if this goes through, those people that are actually doing this now, they actually make more profit when you do this.
Yeah, so the specific ask, the therefore be it resolved, which is really what we hone in on, that's our ask for RMA or FCM, addresses existing license holders, to your point, and all future license applicants. So I'm not sure about the feasibility of implementing that, but that would be up to the federal government, so. A good point. Any other questions? MP Shields called yesterday as well, and he is grateful for the work that we're doing to take this forward, both like through RMA federally and as well through FTM. So he wanted to thank council for that work, and thank you to Councillor Eichert for bringing this forward to council's attention.
The Conservatives.
Looking for a motion to approve the resolution with amendments as discussed. And it's just a two-part,
so moved, sorry.
recommendation to go to RMA and FTM. You're making that motion, Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. There was an additional piece of correspondence added to the agenda. It is a letter from Minister Allard that went to the members of the both the Edmonton and Calgary Metro Region boards, and just regarding service delivery and cost sharing.
Just a question to member, have you talked to our larger urban partner within the county about that?
About cost sharing?
Since we, and Chris?
No, I was waiting for council decision. I know CAO Henderson did reach out with preliminary information to the CAOs just because we were aware that we are in budget discussions, but I didn't take anything forward until it was finalized by council.
The mayor might have contacted you.
Not at this point, not regarding that.
Not regarding that?
I did reach out to Mayor Fuel, just letting him know that we did have an upcoming meeting with Minister Allard regarding reconsideration of membership in the CMRB, and asked if the town may consider a letter of support for that. But we didn't specifically address any cost sharing discussions at that point. I think it would be a good agenda item for our next Wheatland Regional Partnership meeting to address there. And then if there's other adjacent municipalities that we should be discussing with, I know the previous CRISP agreement had Drumheller involved as well, so. But not specific to this, just because it hadn't been finalized.
And at the last CMRB land use and servicing, this wasn't even talked about. It was a big issue. They could have brought it up right there.
So I think we just have to be mindful that, I believe that MGA, I don't have the wording in front of me, but we're not required to enter into an ICF with any municipalities where all of our borders are within a growth board. But there's some kind of permission language around, we may address cost sharing for services that aren't contemplated in the growth or servicing plan. It's something like that. I can reach out to, so the main municipality that this would apply to for us would be the town of Strathmore, obviously. I'm sorry?
The only one.
Yeah. Well, you could consider, trying to think, our Rocky View border.
Sure. Recreation.
It would be I don't know if all of our border with Rocky View is in the CMRPC.
They're talking about, they're not just talking about us, right? They would be talking about Rocky View,
I'm-
Cochrane and all that.
I'm not sure who it was aimed at. I'm happy to reach out to Mayor Fuel and have a conversation with him. It might not be bad for us to respond. One important point that I think we do need to make with Minister is that, looking at cost sharing of one specific service like recreation and isolation is maybe not the best way to address cost sharing in general. When you're contemplating cost sharing in an ICF, and I know maybe GM Boscario would have more experience with this, but when you're contemplating cost sharing, I think it's appropriate to look at all of the services that are cost shared. And we partner on a lot of services when you think about everything from emergency management and fire, transportation services that we respond. And there's other economic impacts as well between municipalities. A lot of Wheatland County ratepayers shop in adjacent municipalities like the town of Strathmore and provide economic stimulus to their businesses, which then in turn contributes to their tax base. So it's a complex relationship when you're looking at intermunicipal servicing and infrastructure and the expenses that are all around that. So it may be better to look at something like mutually beneficial public services, including things like infrastructure as well, because I think about things like our transportation network that we invest in that makes possible some of the work for people in urban municipalities around us and that type of thing. So we did. With Mayor Fuel. Yep. Yeah.
Can't hear.
Oh, turn your microphone on.
I'm just saying that, communicate with the mayor and make sure that when these letters go in there, we don't get blindsided in a month from the minister because of something that was said, and speak more in the letter, speak more of generalities and working together, that type of thing, than specific issues.
So if I might propose, the minister's asking for a response by the 15th. Initially, I had thought we could discuss it with her. We had a meeting scheduled for the 11th, but I think everybody saw the correspondence that that's been postponed to the 18th. We do have a council meeting January 12th. I could commit to reaching out to Mayor Fuel prior to that council meeting, and then perhaps I could draft just a draft response for council consideration at the January 12th council meeting, and we could forward it to her prior to the 15th.
But, you know, if we weren't in the CMRB, we could do an ICF with these.
Not just could, we would have to do an ICF.
But, yeah, that would be red tape reduction right there.
Yesterday I had a phone conversation with Jordan. And there was some discussion about our membership in the CMRB, and things that he said to me, I'm gonna ask him to put it on pen to paper and see if that would help. The conversation, the way I heard it, was basically, why are we there?
Interesting.
We'll try to get that in writing.
So
I highly doubt it, but I will try.
just while we're on this topic and the meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, administration is working on drafting a brief for the minister as well. It will basically just be a reiteration of what we have sort of addressed with our MLAs, with the previous minister, with the premier historically. And the main focus, given that we are further along in the growth plan, some of the elements that will be included in that briefing is the fact that the current growth plan that's being proposed has 3 joint planning areas, which are sort of the focused areas for growth in the Calgary metro region, and none of them extend east of Chestermere. As well, in the 30-year transportation window that's being looked at, there are no major significant transportation projects that come out east of Chestermere. So when you're really looking at where the growth and servicing plan are focused, it does not extend past east of Chestermere. And it's actually interesting to me that the proposed growth plan really is, so it's, the other key thing to note is it is transit-oriented design is what the board opted to go with, which makes that 30-year transportation plan, 30-year window transportation plan even more key to our relevance, because when your entire growth plan is based on that transportation plan and we're not on it, that really speaks volumes. And there's one other thing I was going to say. All right.
In that workshop that we went, that I attended, there, the transit-oriented design, they talk about freeways, and that's where your industrial and commercial development could be. And yeah, and then when Calgary mentions that they want to have regional economic development, it really concerns me because and I brought this up at the the land use was, that is our most developable area. It has exactly what they were talking about, the contractor, and they want to have control of that. And that's really is my concern. That's what I brought up to the board, or for the committee, I should say.
Yeah, and there's some concerns around scope creep and stuff with that as well, and what sort of should be the focus of the regional board, particularly given the nature of the voting structure and the power and compromising of autonomy of other municipalities and given that structure. So the thing that I was going to say I find interesting about the iteration of the growth plan that we're considering is it really is almost a growth plan that focuses on sub-regional growth is what I'm seeing, because they're focusing on these joint planning areas, which maybe have 3 or one has 4, I think, municipalities in these joint planning areas where they are focusing growth. And so they've really taken, because we actually argued for sub-regional collaboration all along. We said, of course, we want regional planning. We are happy to, I was in a meeting yesterday with Chestermere and Rocky View, and how can we coordinate things? Like, we're happy to do that. All along we've been saying that we are happy to do sub-regional planning and to contribute to a regional, to smart regional strategic growth. But I just find it curious that this plan is really, I'm not a planner, but I would say it focuses on sub-regional planning. So I think it's interesting how that's come around, so. So if ever, I don't know if we need a motion, but I'm happy to call Mayor Fuel. We can have a conversation. They will not have a council meeting, so I know he won't necessarily, I don't know when their next council meeting is. They're moving their municipal offices and things like that. So I think they had their last council meeting early in December, end of November. But I can see if they're going to have a council meeting prior to that, perhaps we could look at a joint letter.
I'll move that you touch base and report back on our January meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Any other? Yeah, in the past, when we've broached this subject, there was always a concern of the traffic, especially rush hour traffic from Strathmore going down Acreage Road, Glenmore Trail, road in front of Oxbow. When the Oxbow annexation come forward, that kind of dropped off because part of the annexation was the road goes with it. Normally it wouldn't. It's the road south of, west of. That's a road on the north side. No, to get that road, because that was always, we've had a lot of requests to pave that road. And when you actually go out and look at the traffic on that road, there's not much traffic until it's rush hour. Anyway, that's a good example of infrastructure being provided to the urbans. And if we're going to start going down that road again, don't let that drop off the radar that we've built roads there and we've paved the one road where the predominant traffic is Strathmore. And we're not being recognized for that in any way. And when you're talking growth management board and the transportation networks, yeah, we're not part of it, but we're funding the whole darn thing around Strathmore. And keep that in your mind when you're talking to sports facilities or any kind of shared infrastructure. Those roads are expensive, and we have to maintain them. We've got to plow them early in the morning, get the snow off, and on and on and on it goes.
Yeah, that's an excellent example, Councillor Custer. That's a perfect example where we are investing in infrastructure that is beneficial to other municipalities. And there's other areas of the county where we have high traffic counts that we know it's some of our ratepayers, but it's also ratepayers from other municipalities. So I think it's just important that we don't look at any single service or piece of infrastructure in isolation, that we keep it in the context of all of the ways that we partner. So that's a perfect example, Glenn. Thank you. There's a motion on the floor regarding just discussing this letter and the possibility of a joint response and some planning and discussions regarding this from Councillor Armstrong. Any other questions or discussion? Is any councillor opposed? Motion is carried. We do have 2 closed session agenda items. Prior to us moving into closed session, can each councillor please affirm that they are in a private setting where they will be the only person able to access confidential information in order to uphold our council code of conduct? Reeve Link affirms. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Affirmed.
Councillor Wilson.
Affirms.
Councillor Bigger.
Affirmed.
Councillor Eichert.
Affirm.
Councillor Kester.
Affirmed.
Councillor Armstrong.
Affirmed.
I'll now move us into closed session. Is anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Glenn, we'll just have you call in on that other number. Brian will text it to you.
Okey doke.
It's missed the recording there.
Okay. Yeah. Any motions arising from closed session?
Write it out, Donna.
I didn't write it out. I move that WRC board members go to the WRC Corporation next meeting and ask if Wheatland County could do a audit payable by Wheatland County. Third party.
So if I may, perhaps just direct the board members to offer a governance and operations review with the county providing the funding, but with the WRC doing the tendering for the consultant that would provide the review as per their procurement policies or procedures, whatever they have in place. Well, I guess if we're paying it, if we could maybe try and if we're paying it, we should follow ours, even though another entity would be awarding it. What would be appropriate?
That would be fine.
Okay.
We could look into a couple.
Would you guys be okay with that?
I think there needs to be a timeline on it.
A timeline for completion?
Tie for completion or hiring?
So it doesn't get pushed into August, September.
Approximately how long have other reviews taken?
About as soon as possible. Okay.
As soon as possible.
Does that capture?
Excuse me, Reeve, can you repeat the motion, please? Are you amending Councillor Bigger's motion?
I was offering just a friendly amendment, and I can try, and please, if you have better wording, please offer it to us. So just that council would direct the WRC board members to extend an offer to the Wheatland Regional Corporation Board oh, sorry.
So the council direct WRC members
Yeah.
to extend offer to the WRC board?
Yeah.
Or the Wheatland County members?
To the Wheatland Regional Corporation Board to fund an independent third party review of governance and operations.
Okay?
To be completed as soon as possible. Did I miss something? Oh, as per Wheatland Region, or Wheatland County procurement policy.
Can I read that back to you?
For sure.
Okay, that council direct, the Wheatland County member, or WRC members to extend an offer to the WRC Corp Board to fund an independent third-party review of governance and operations to be completed as soon as possible, as per WC procurement policy.
I think that captures what was discussed.
For
Anything missing?
We're directing which members, the WRC members?
Board members.
Yeah, the Wheatland County representatives on the Wheatland Regional Corporation Board.
So our members to the board.
Yep, you bet.
Asking for budget modeling for this.
Okay.
Donna, is that consistent with the direction you were going? Any discussion on the motion?
I do not support the motion. I think, I don't believe that it is a good use of our public funds, and it prolongs, the expenses in Division 5, Lakes of Muirfield, for an unknown amount of period when we have a solution at hand.
And I share some of your concerns. I'm trying to balance our fiscal responsibilities with our responsibilities to foster partnerships and work together on a sort of a regional level, but I do echo some of your concerns, absolutely. Any other discussion?
I have similar concerns, however, the discussions we've had at length and, being sitting on the board, I'm willing to support it.
I would just add that this potential audit has no way of knowing whether they'll follow out with such recommendations. It could be a complete waste of money. I am completely against.
Any other questions or discussion?
Is there a monetary amount that's sort of?
No.
No? So it can be anything?
Could we ask that a proposal be brought back to council for consideration?
We're awarding the contract. Allowing the WRC to award the contract under.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I meant like once they had chosen one to bring back. We could say up to $10,000 or that procurement policy that I referenced for the two quotes is between 5,001 and up to 20,000 in that range of expenditure.
I agree with you, Jason, but I'm on the board and I have to go along with this. I have to do everything in my power to see that this board succeeds.
So did we want to limit? Is that what you're asking?
Brian, just from your experience with other reviews that have been done on our own internal county departments, and given the kind of scale of this corporation,
I would set a limit of 15,000 and then amend if required.
does that,
Accept your friendly amendment, Donna?
Yeah, accept that. Margaret, do you have that?
and do we need to say where that would come out of?
With offer not to exceed 15,000?
Yep.
Yeah, up to $15,000, and if it were to exceed that, it would need to come back for council consideration. Any other questions or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Jason,
sorry.
I'd heard you were opposed, but you would need to indicate so. There is opposition, so we'll do a roll call vote.
So we'll stay consistent with the meeting.
Counselor Kester, have you called back in? I should have done another roll call.
It'll be reflected in the minutes when you left.
Okay. Reeve Link is in favor. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
In favor.
Counselor Wilson.
Opposed?
Counselor Bigger.
In favor?
Counselor Eichert.
In favor.
Counselor Armstrong. Motion is carried. Is there any other motions arising from our closed session?
Yes, Wilson moved for council to direct WRC members to ask for budgets for a hybrid scenario, for a scenario that the county is completely out, and a scenario for the Wheatland County is completely in for all servicing, as well as the effect on the price of water per cube with each scenario.
Sorry, once again, I'll have to have you repeat.
We can just give that one to you after, Margaret.
So basically, we're looking at a request for like a multimodal budget with different models reflected. Yeah, he outlined three models that he would like.
Everything out, everything in, and a hybrid. Price of water for each one.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? I guess just from my perspective, were you directing the board members to request that? Yeah, so it's a request, and obviously the board would have the liberty to respond to that request or not. So in no way are we directing another board's operations. It would be, they would have autonomy to determine how they respond to that information request. Any other questions or discussion? Is any counselor opposed? Motion is carried. That brings us to the end of our agenda. I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.